Hi there, my name is Kendrick, and today I get to interview Will. So, Will, welcome, man.
Hey, how's it going?
Good dude. Can you tell us your full type, please?
Yes, so evidently I'm INFJ, Ni-Fe, audio, blast, play, consume, sleep.
All right. And what did you think, and how did you feel when you got your typing results back?
It's kind of interesting because I was somebody who had the favorite blankie syndrome going into this about the Myers-Briggs. Like I've been a Myers-Briggs freak for a long time, and I'd always tested ENTJ. And then I got someone in the community earlier on to type me, and they typed me as essentially a play ENFJ, which kind of blew my mind and sent me into like this weird spiral for 2 months anyway. And then I came back into the official typing. By the time I got this, I was kind of like, okay, I can kind of see it, but I didn't have like the weird reaction that time.
Yeah. So I guess what the tribe was seeing was your high play, and to no surprise, your double activated play.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny because my mom is also into Myers-Briggs stuff, and she types in Myers-Briggs as INFJ, but she might be. I'm not sure. Um, every time I tell somebody I'm an INFJ, I feel like a fraud because she's like, "You're not an introvert."
Yeah.
I'm like, "No, I'm not an introvert."
No, you're not, but you're an INFJ.
Yeah,
So
weird.
yeah, which is like the most popular personality type in the internet. Like everyone wants to be an INFJ. So
Except for me, strangely. Go figure.
oh yeah, what type did you want to be?
I thought I was an ENTJ. I typed as that, but I probably typed in high school, and it was kind of, it's high
Yeah.
school's I. So I just I guess I kind of dug in on that a little bit. It's
Well,
weird.
at least you saw the NI and SE part.
Yeah. At least I got that thing right. The FETI, what do you call it, axis kind of threw me a bit. I was a little weirded out by that.
All right, cool, man. Well, why don't we jump in and talk about that? So, um, you're not an ENTJ. You have FE and you have TI, and now that you know you have TI, how do you personally experience that masculine TI of yours? Because it's a demon, right?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I'm somebody who I guess the sort of stereotype for like the the lead T people is sort of like they're more the debatey type and the F's are. I've always been super debating. I've always been really into why people think the way they think, like what policies are best, that kind of stuff. I've always liked that. So I don't know. It's weird to figure out how I experience that as a demon. Maybe it's sort of like something I'm fascinated with rather than something I realize I'm doing. It's kind of like if you wake up in the morning and someone asks, "Well, what are the things you did today?" The last thing you would think would be breathing. You list everything else you did before that. And so I guess
Right.
that's kind of what the saviors are like.
Well, we can talk about that later on as well because your sleep lasts, and maybe you won't be breathing long. Just kidding. Just going it's going dark now. But,
Yeah, that's right.
anyhow, so what about the extrovert feeling side? You have feminine extrovert feeling, so that would mean that emotions are not personal to you, and that would mean that you adhere to tribe values. Do you resonate with those definitions or sentiments?
Yeah, and it's still really confusing because feeling should be feeling, right? And it should be something where like if you've got feeling as a savior, it makes sense that you would be somebody who like kind of is in touch with your own feelings. I don't feel like I am. I've never felt like I'm in touch with my own feelings, but I can tell when other people feel a certain way about something. And I kind of like sort of move around that a little bit, if that makes sense.
Right.
It's like I realized something when I was talking to somebody about this, that one of the things I love about debate is um, when you can sort of surprise somebody and watch their emotional reaction to what they're saying, like what you're saying. Like I want to find things that are interesting enough to say or ideas that someone hadn't thought of that makes them have a reaction that I can actually register and see happening in real time because I find that exciting. So I guess that's one way of being manifest.
Gotcha. Now, you said that you don't feel like you were in touch with your feeling, which makes sense. It's extroverted, right? So it's kind
Yeah.
of like, you know, in a moment kind of deal. It's not something that you process internally. What about your introvert thinking though? Is that something that you can see? Like, do you see yourself stacking your reasons? Even though it's the demon, you're still a double decider, so it's gonna be like 60-40, right? So do you see yourself stacking reasons and having your reasons as being personal to you?
Yeah, I think so. I never really conceived of it this way because, like with TE, it kind of made sense, but I from what I understood of TE was sort of like what works in reality, what works for everybody. That kind of makes sense, but like when I started realizing the TI actually resonates with me is when I realized that when I think of a way or a framework of how to think of something, there is the logical way and then there's the idiot way. So it's sort of like it's this sort of thing where it's like with my TI, it's sort of like I'm constantly trying to sort of refine, okay, what is a good framework here? What can be tested over and over again? And I really do narrow in on that stuff. And so the TE thing kind of makes sense that I'm FE and not TE, if that tracks at all, because the TE, it seems like, is kind of saying, well, I understand how you think that way and how you think that way. I don't get that as much. I'm like, how can you not connect the dots here with other people?
All right. So speaking of FE and TI, that would mean that you are a double decider, and that's why you're not an ENTJ or ENFJ, because people problems is not your biggest problem. So can you talk about having things problem as opposed to people problem? And when you realize that you were a double decider, you're like, that makes so much sense.
That's a right now because it's still hard for me to sort of see. It's hard for me not to see it as kind of a decider thing. I think I was watching the video on, I believe it was Darren Brown or somebody, about how when you've got sort of last in play as an INFJ, you've got a little bit of those decidery feelings about things. You definitely, like, I've definitely tried to ping different people for what they think, what they're feeling about things. And so it feels like it's always felt in my life like that's been more out of balance. So it's kind of tricky looking at that kind of stuff. And it may be the way the animal stack is set up rather than how the young function is stacked that makes me think a little bit more that way. It's tricky because it's sort of like there have definitely been times where I really want something to happen. Like I've got an idea, I know how this can work, and I push it ahead. And there's sometimes that I'll have like a coworker or manager or someone say, "But did you consider X, Y, and Z?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, probably should go back and do that." That makes sense.
Oh, gotcha. Well, that makes sense. You know, your sleep lasts, right? So you're gonna have more decider problems than the typical, INFJ, that would have a think problem if they had consumed last or something. Let's talk about your first animal, which is Blast. So we kind of shared that in the sense that both our first animals are double feminine. So you have double feminine, NF Blast. Can you share a little bit of how you personally experience that and how you use it, with others?
I guess. I hadn't really thought of it in that framework per se. I guess it's something where I can speak more to them sort of separately, like the N and the F separately than together, because I still don't quite comprehend how like last NF works, if that makes sense. Like it's still a little mystifying to me. But it's something where like with other people, I try as hard as possible to be accommodating, to be nice to people, to make everything work. And I'm kind of, for most things, I kind of have a sense of what's going to work with different people and what's going to resonate with different people. So I try to stay clear of that and stay clear of different people's feelings and stuff like that. Try not to get too involved with that and sort of work on the feeling side. On the intuitive side, it's kind of interesting because it's like I will sort of take different data points together and be like, this theory explains these data points. And I'll be like dead set on that until something proves it otherwise. But the second there's a sensory thing where it's like that doesn't work, I'm like, okay, maybe I need to recalibrate this theory. But it is kind of like I do jump to a theory for why something is happening faster than most, I guess.
Would you say you're the kind of person that would like pump people up, because it's like NF, right? So it's like, telling people, hey, you know what? You're worth it. You are someone that's strong, you're powerful, you have a lot of good qualities, like do you do that kind of stuff? Like you pump people up, you say like nice things to kind of change their emotional state and
yeah, a little bit. That's kind of interesting though, because there are some people you need to do like the positive emotional support, and some people for whom you need to be comfortable enough with, like, if you can show that you're comfortable enough with them to, it has to be the right person, insult the right person in the right way that they laugh. That's worth it too, because that shows the level of like intimacy with the person and connection with the person that sometimes just saying nice things wouldn't, because nice things are safe and a little bit sanitized. So sometimes if you got somebody who you know likes a little bit of that back and forth, or likes that kind of like a little bit more of a digging compliment thing, sometimes that's something that works better.
Gotcha. All right. I guess that's a double feminine side where you're flexible on how to use it. You know, it's not like, you're just using it one way. Yeah,
sorry, that made me think it's weird when I start meeting masculine and extroverted feelers in the wild, because I don't understand it at all. I see it. I'm like, what? Like it's sort of like aggressive. I'm trying to help you thing. It's so weird to me when I see it happen. Like, what? It becomes something where it, like, depending on the person, it can get to the point where it's like they're trying to be so nice to somebody, and their heart's in the right place, but they're doing things where it's like banging you over the head, say, why won't you let me help you? And I'm like, I don't want to be that person. Right. I want to be like, here to be nice if you need it. If not, I'm getting out of the way. Let you do your thing.
Yeah. I did see that masculine extrovert feeling and feminine extrovert feeling are so different. It's crazy. It's the same function.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really weird.
Yeah, it is so different. It's crazy. I don't know.
And it's also, it might also be the thinking about the INFJ thing. It might be a little bit of that "don't control me, bro" thing that comes out. I'm like, no, you're not going to be telling me what I'm going to be doing with this person or today or whatever that you think will be great for everybody.
Okay, I do want to ask you something about because it's interesting. You have double activated FE, right? But you're still double cider. So what and then Dave and Shan have seen clips of like INFJs doing this also. But so basically, like double deciders like to give like what is it called? Backhanded compliments, or they'll, if someone is like on a high horse, they'll like knock them down a few notches, because you can't be too high or too low. If someone's too low, you bring them up. But if someone's on a high horse, you bring them down. So, and I've seen people with FE do this also, which is kind of interesting because you think it's only like someone with TE. Have you done that to people personally, or like someone's on a high horse, like some kind of IP type or something, and you're like, no, we're gonna knock this guy a few notches. We'll throw us like a few jokes to do that.
Yeah. I don't do that as much as some people. I think the two things I do are one, if it's somebody that I know who's taking themselves too seriously, I will let them have it.
Like, you'll what?
I'll let them have it. I'll make fun of them, like, mercilessly. But the key is, if you say something funny enough, nobody cares that it's offensive.
Right.
And I think the other thing is, if somebody is like trying to be too controlling, I guess, or like they're like, I'm important and controlling it this way, there's a little bit of that. I notice this sort of creeps up a little bit when people get really, you ever meet people who are kind of sort of like name droppy and kind of statusy, stuff like that. Like, I don't know, maybe it's the feminine feeling thing where it's sort of like, I like to play around with that a little bit, and I just make stuff up halfway through just to see if they notice. Like, oh yeah, I met 3 presidents. Just to see how long it takes to realize I'm trolling.
Yeah. I want to talk to you now about your play, SF play, double activated. That one is a strange, it's not strange, sorry, but this one I'm seeing more and more in my day-to-day life now, like people with SEFE. It's so interesting because it's very TE like, but in like an FE way. Like when I go to work, there's a guy who's an ESTP, and he'll go up to me. He's like, "Hey Kendrick, have you tried this restaurant? Man, it's the best." Because they look at the spectrum, the SE, right? And then with the FE, it's like, this is the best, like, so it's like emotional, like an exchange of emotions. Like, this is the best tasting food, It's like, or he'll go up and say, hey, how come you never recommend any restaurants to me, you know? And so it's like, and then like if I insult him on the SF, he doesn't take it personally. Like if I say like, dude, I went to the restaurant you recommended to me, it sucks, you know? He'll be like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, well, what about this other restaurant, you know? So it's almost like TE with bad ideas, but it's like emotional. Do you see yourself doing that to people? Like, you know?
Oh yeah. And I mean, I do that with things in general. Like whenever I really get into something, regardless of what it is, I will try every single thing of that and sort of have like a ranking system. It's not like, at least for me, when people think of this SE ranking, they think 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't have that. It's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever seen those things online where it's sort of like the ranking thing where it's like A category, B category, C category. That's kind of the way I do it more. So like two of my vices, whiskeys and cigars. Like I've tried pretty much every Scotch whiskey imaginable. I've tried every cigar. So those are two things that are sort of like, I don't know, old world era things that I find interesting. So like I would invite friends over to my favorite cigar bar when I was in Nashville, and I was like, okay, let's go in, and I could ask them, okay, what's your like, what kind of flavors? Like, what kind of this? Like, go through the list, and then find the right one. And then if they didn't like it, I'd be like, okay, I'll get you a better one next time. Or I would go just buy one from them. Okay, I gotta try this one.
That's so crazy. It's like TE, but like for emotion, you know,
Yeah,
like fun, you know, exchange of like um you know, chemical like you know, inner chemicals like you know, dopamine, you know, and whatnot.
yeah, it's so weird. It feels very razor thin sometimes. If you take like, let's say feminine T and feminine Fe, it looks kind of similar in different ways, except I guess feminine T is a little bit more, I can make this work for you versus I think you'll like this more. Like I think
Yeah,
that's in like,
yeah, exactly. Yes, yeah. That it looks similar, but there's that you just nailed it on the head, like this
yeah,
the subtle differences. Yeah.
very subtle.
Yeah. Yeah, it is true though. Feminine TE can come across as FE, you know.
Mhm.
And yeah, I guess feminine FE could come across as TE too, you know. Um
Yeah.
um Part of SF is also like the cool factor, like what's popular. Can you and you know, like David Chat always say, like, you know, those guys that has guys or gals that have like this specific function stack. If you have like SEFE for some reason, you know how to look good, you know like how to style yourself. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like you just know how to present, you know?
It feels like such a meta conversation. Like, here's how I'm great at dressing. Like, I'm really not great at dressing, but I don't know, there are certain things where it's like, I guess the SEF thing is kind of like when I go to places, I'm constantly scanning for what looks good, and like space is more my thing. Like rooms, smells, things like that. Like if I go into a really cool restaurant and it's okay, they have these Hans Wegner chairs here, and they've got like split leaf philodendrons, and they've got like all this stuff. I look through what's in there. There's a little bit of, oh, I could borrow this, and I could borrow this, and I could borrow this, and kind of saying what are the, I guess is where it relates to the patterns too, is sort of like what am I seeing at cool places that have a great vibe? Like what makes a great vibe? Like what are the elements that are there, and why does something feel off when it's missing? So I guess that's kind of the way it manifests to an extent, is like, for instance, I'm like way into the weeds on like candle scenting, things like that. Like, because I'm starting to notice that every time you go into a hotel, there was a signature scent when you walk in. So I'm like, oh, how can I make that happen in my house? And so I found the scenting machines, found the companies that do it. And it literally is something where there's constantly an ambient scent that goes throughout the house, because I'm like, this puts people at ease for businesses. Why can't we put people at ease in like real situations, like with friends?
Um, I want to ask you about being audio kinesthetic. So let's talk about the audio first, and I want to tie it in with the SF. So because you're audio, I'm gonna guess your SF is gonna be heavily towards like sound and music. You know, is that something that you also do in your home? Like make sure that you have like the right, you know, music, background noise, whatever, like to
Oh, I
set.
don't know anything about music. Um, yeah, no, I play a bunch of different instruments. I was a producer for a while, so I'm
Oh,
really into
cool.
music. My family's all in the music business, so like there's a lot of that stuff. Like that's a big part of it too, is like both creating music there's that sort of side of it. And then there's also the when people come over curating a space. So I've got Spotify playlists for every different kind of mood, every different kind of party. Anytime we throw a party, I'm gonna have a Spotify playlist that's made for that party. And that kind of goes with the mood of what we're trying to do. And we also throw parties that are sort of like themed in that regard. So sort of like what matches the theme of the party. So yeah, definitely that's been fun.
Now I want to ask you about the kinesthetic side. You have double activated masculine extrovert sensing, and in the classes that Dave and Chan put out, they never typed him like in a class, but he mentioned his type. So George St. Pierre is a UFC fighter, and he's an INFJ, and he's the best welterweight fighter of all time. He defended his belt like 9 times, before he dropped it. So do you feel like with the masculine extrovert sensing, do you feel like you were athletic in some way, growing up, or are you good at working out and picking up sports relatively quick? No? Okay.
No. It doesn't work that way at all for me, but the way it does manifest is with rhythm and with like a clear understanding of time and space, if that makes sense. Like I just never was very coordinated. I don't know why, so I never played that kind of stuff. But it's one of those things where it's like if I'm playing something in Pro Tools, like for people who are like audio people, like if you're recording in Pro Tools and you're like on a grid, you can see where it is in the grid. If I'm playing in Note, it's gonna like I guess that's the way it manifests for me. Is it sort of feeds into the audio side of things, because there are a lot of great musicians who have a great sense of like the feel for a song, and maybe like they're great singers or different things like that, but they don't have the timing element that you see sometimes. And I think that's something where the SF or I guess the masculine sensory kind of sticks its head in for me.
Do you also have like the smashy thing? Like, do you smash guitars and stuff?
I have smashed the guitar on accident once. I got really mad and threw it. Just once though. I haven't smashed it.
How did it feel? How did it feel when you smashed it?
Great, and then awful. I'm like, oh no! Oh, that's cool. Oh no! Yeah, no, I'm totally the kind of person that when I'm recycling bottles, I don't put them in gently. My recycling guy probably hates me.
Yeah. I want to go back to the extrovert sensing in a bit, but I want to go back to your introvert intuition real quick. It's feminine. So that's gonna be your obsession, but because it's feminine, do you feel like you're forgetting your patterns and concepts and maybe long-term plans all the time?
Yeah, I don't have a long-term plan for myself at all. That's the weird. This is where the sleep comes in. It's like I really don't, but I do like to track like what is the underlying thing. Like my favorite books to read, for instance, are all ones about like what is this sort of big pattern that can be unlocked. So like the fourth turning is really interesting, or like what's the Trust Me I'm Lying is really interesting. Anything where there's like something about a bigger pattern that happens that explains different events in the world. That's super interesting to me. And it's weird because it feels like, at least for me, the way it manifests is kind of, I feel like feminine introverted intuition is like a step in the direction of NE, if that makes sense. Where it's sort of like it's a little bit less personal. I'm less dead set on this must be the way it is. But like if I find a theory that explains a bunch of weird stuff I don't understand, especially about like social interactions of why people are the way they are and think the way they think, that's something that I'll sort of adopt as my own thought process, and I'll sort of tweak it and refine it. And then if the facts aren't there, I'll throw it away eventually and find a new one. But I want to have an explanation.
Got it. Your consume, it's double masculine ST. So even though it's a demon, I'm gonna guess this is something that you very much see, because I find that people's double masculine animal almost has like a feel of gravity towards it. Like you cannot not see it, even though it's a demon. Yours is ST. How do you personally experience that double masculine ST consume?
That's one I haven't. It's weird to figure out how ST consume works. Like for me, I don't get it. Like, is there an example of like what this could look like? But I'll tell you if it resonates.
Yeah, of course. I'll give you a few examples. So, the first thing with ST is obviously gathering facts or consuming facts. So like stats, like if you're into sports, you follow like, like the score and whatnot. The stock market, like you're tracking like, the ups and downs in the curve of the prices of the stock market. It's also wanting to collect for some people with like high ST, they like to collect like a lot of money. It's like, oh yeah, I like to collect, I like to see my bank account go up, like it's like ST consume. But it's also how to do something because it's ST, right? It's like the doing energy. So if you have high ST, then you like to gather on how to do something. So a lot of people that have high ST, they'll like I'll use that guy, Henry Cavill, the Superman guy. So he'll research on how to put together a computer and he'll put it together, based on his research. He'll read a manual because the manual has like the ST steps, and then he'll like piece together the computer, or like a lot of like ISTPs, they're stereotypes, they're mechanics, right? But they'll learn how to do it first before they put it together. So it's all about like gathering the facts, and then doing something with it.
Yeah, a lot of that sounds really familiar. So I guess one of the things is I do like consume facts like crazy, especially historical stuff. Like I'm really into history. Like I can tell you what year pretty much any album I've heard came out. I could tell you who played on each record. I could tell you like that kind of like stupid trivia crap. Like I got one up all day long. In terms of the how to do stuff, it's kind of because like when I'm producing, like, and I guess still when I'm dabbling at this point, a big part of it is me trying to figure out like how do you get different sounds? How do you get mixes right? Like I guess that is the ST of like how do I get the EQ to cut out this frequency that's really annoying me, or why is my track run like how do I debug this thing? So I guess a lot of that kind of pans out there, and then just random facts.
Do you feel like you get triggered when you use extrovert sensing? Because SE is your triggering function, right? Because it's your fourth. So when you consume or you sleep, do you feel like you're triggered? There's like a part of you that gets triggered. Like there's a sense of frustration from the chaos of the extrovert sensing. It's like, why do I have to go gather this?
I don't get that so much. Anytime somebody makes me do anything physical that I don't want to do, I freak out about it. Like I am the worst person to take on a hike. Like I will literally scream and yell at everybody if I have to do something like that. Like it's really bad. I'm such a baby. Like I just start saying, "You guys have fun with that on your own. I'm not gonna enjoy it. I'll see you at the end." So I guess there is. To answer the question, I guess there is a little bit of. It doesn't like. Oh, you know what? With random chaos, because I'm married to a chaos monkey who will change the plan at the last minute or throw something in that wasn't part of the plan. Yeah, it's sort of like I can deal with the plan if I know like at least an hour in advance, or like a consultant. If it happens like right before it's supposed to happen, I will be so angry about that. Just because, and it's like something I'm fine with, but just that is changing at the last second really annoys me. But as I said, I've got a pretty big band. It's just in the last few minutes if something changes, I'm like, oh.
I see. So you're better than the tradition, like the typical INFJ, because you can still channel change or change the plan as long as it's not super last minute. Now, I made a mistake earlier. I said NT sleep. It's actually like SF play and ST consume. Those are your animals that touches your extrovert sensing. So one is chaos from the tribe and one is chaos from what you personally consume. So you have SF play as a savior. Do you feel like the chaos from the tribe is something that doesn't trigger as much as something that you personally research, or what?
No, it really depends on the situation. Like the chaos, like I guess a lot of the chaos is when I guess let me put it this way. Like a big part of like I'm a very hedonistic person in a regard where it's sort of like I like to have comfort whenever I can have like physical comfort. Like if I go like to a hotel and like the air conditioning's not working, or like there's something like that, or like I go out somewhere, like everyone makes fun of me because every time I like sweat and then have to hug someone at a social gathering like in the summer, I hate it. It's like the most embarrassing. Like, I can't stand that kind of stuff. So there's a little bit of it manifests in weird ways that you don't think would be a big deal, but I will freak out about little things where it's like if my physical environment around me is controlled, I'm fine with whatever random chaos crap is happening out there and I'll watch it. But if it's something where it's affecting me personally in my space, if that makes sense, I get a little weird.
I see. So that's the chaos that gets you, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about like bugs and stuff? You know, like
like what?
Like bugs and insects. You know, like let's say you're outdoors. And...
yeah, I really don't like them. That doesn't freak me out as much, but it is a bit of me. I always say I don't hate nature. Nature hates me. Like when I go outside, like if I spend too much time outside, I'll be sunburned, like bitten by everything on the planet. Like I'll have birds crap on my head, like all that kind of stuff. It's just it doesn't work. It's sort of like I like being in a controlled environment. Like my favorite thing, if I'm going to enjoy the beach, is like to be in a place that's kind of like shaded with a little bit of like unnatural air blowing on me while I watch the beach.
Yeah, I see. That's funny. That's okay. I see now how you're an IJ, you know, but you have your own unique twist to it, which is kind of interesting, you know, because every IJ seems
yeah,
to...
it's
yeah,
yeah, it's weird because it's sort of like I guess the SE is in the wrong place of where it should be in the stack. So it's sort of like that's where you see me being, I guess, bad at like sports and like physical things and being annoyed when there are physical things pushed on me.
yeah,
like I know you're a trainer, right?
yeah. I work in the fitness industry.
Yeah. Like I've done boot camps a few times, and it's always like the worst experience. I get too competitive, then I throw up, and then I'm like, I can't do it anymore. I'm one of those people.
Yeah, I taught a circuit training class once, and someone puked because that the community center I work at, their AC broke for that day, so
Oh no.
it was yeah, it was super hot and there was no air circulation. So this one girl, she after class she like got pale, sat down and puked. I was like, oh my god, felt so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah. What you said, the air conditioning thing, where I like, okay, demon comfort off, you know.
yeah. Yeah, but I mostly teach spin nowadays, and that's like my thing because it's like auditory. Yeah. I like the music aspect of it. So
yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
All right, dude. Let's talk about the main meat here now. Your sleep last, NT sleep last. All right. So your identity is tied to sleep, to your NT sleep, but you have it last, so it's gonna be like tough, right? Although it doesn't touch any of your triggering function, so you have like that benefit that comes along with it.
Yeah.
Because according to David Chan, as long as it doesn't touch your triggering function, it might be hard, but it doesn't necessarily will trigger you, right?
Yeah.
So with anti-sleep, your identity is tied to intelligence, you know, like the ability to figure things out. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I guess there's something that sort of dawned on me recently is one of the questions I hate getting asked the most is where do you see yourself in 5 years? Those kind of questions. I'm like, I have no idea. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just hoping things kind of work out. Like it is kind of like an SF thing in that way where it's sort of like I'll grab opportunities as they come. Like I'm quick to grab them and I have pretty good luck doing it. So it's like there's a bit of whenever I have to think about things like things I hate to talk about, like retirement, like what's going to happen when I get old, like where I'm going to live, like if like what my legacy is gonna be, like none of that stuff. Like I can't do that. It's just it's so annoying because it's like I feel like there's a and maybe that's sort of the stupid thing too, is I feel like whatever I say is gonna come back and look stupid one day if I say it. You know, it's like, oh, I want to go work in this industry and do this thing. I'm gonna look stupid because either I didn't do it and it exists or it doesn't even exist anymore. There's something like that.
Right.
So I guess I don't know if that's demon and T that I'm describing, but that's at least sort of my problems and my fears and how I think it's manifesting.
Yeah, with NT last, it seems like you're very pessimistic with long-term planning. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, because like you attach a TI with the NI, right? So the masculine TI feels certain that the NI is gonna crap on you, like that thing is not gonna exist. And you seem like confident, your TI seems confident because it's masculine, that NI, which is flexible, is not gonna be there because it's flexible. It's feminine NI, right? So it's like, nope, it's gonna be gone,
Yeah. Well, I guess it's one of those things where I think when Dave and Shin, if I ever say Dan and Shay at this point, just let me know because I've done that several times now because it's so close.
I'm not gonna correct you if you do that.
I'm just gonna keep talking about Dan and Shay. I'm just gonna drink a shot of tequila each time it happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. I think it's something where it's like they're talking about when you've got like sort of feminine intuition, especially as a savior, it's like it could be this way, but if a fact comes and blows it, oh well, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm kind of thinking about that. It's sort of like all the time, like, yeah, this is what I would like to do, but I don't know, that might fall apart. Like I've changed careers so many different times. Like people told me when I was in college, I think this is true. Is like, hey, the careers you have don't exist. Like you were going to have don't exist yet. True. Secondly, it's not gonna be like three jobs. Be like multiple different careers through your life. So I'm like, well, why am I trying to plan when everything changes so quickly?
Yeah. That's so interesting with that masculine SE and feminine NI. It's it's kind of strange.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be controlling with the future, but you're not, it's like you are cool with the SE almost, like quite cool with it. Or maybe you're not. It's more because you're pessimistic, right? So your outlook's pessimistic. So
well, it's funny you say that because a lot of people do say my outlook's pessimistic as well, but it's sort of like I am constantly in a state of like happiness in a weird not constant but like I am so excited about whatever's coming next, even if I perceive it as bad.
Right.
Because it's kind of like it's the chaos of everything. It's like when people were saying years ago, because I used to work for a rideshare company. And one of the things we were talking about was, when this gets automated, it's going to put all these workers out of work, and like the sort of Malthus like the Malthus thinking and the population bomb, Robert like Ehrlich and all these different people saying the same thing, which is we're gonna run out of food, like we're gonna be automated out of a job, you're gonna all this stuff, and every time it's wrong. So it's like every time someone tries to predict something's wrong, every model ends up being wrong. So I never got freaked out about it because I'm like, once you start getting something 40 years out right, then talk, So I don't know. It doesn't bother me if there is a grim prediction, because even if the meat of the grim prediction comes true, the externalities they think will happen don't actually happen. So why am I freaking out?
Right. Okay. So part of NT sleep is your self patterns. Do you have trouble seeing your own patterns?
Yeah. Like I had this terrifying. So I got types like play typing for I got the Dave and Shan typing because I didn't want to record myself and have to see what I look like. And then I realized, oh crap, I have this thinking that if I don't see what other people are seeing, it doesn't exist. It's sort of like I know it is, but I just won't let it process, if that makes sense. So there's a little bit of that where it's like there are a lot of ways that I come off in different conversations and things that I do that are annoying that it takes me a long time to see because I don't want to deal with. I guess that might be the demon TI. Is like I don't want to see how stupid I look. So like if I don't have to deal with that, then maybe it doesn't exist.
That's an interesting take on it. Like if you turn a blind eye, it doesn't exist.
It's weird though, because it is one of those things where it's like where it's like you see all these people doing stuff and you're like, do they realize they're doing that? And the answer is probably no, if it's really obnoxious. And it's like when you see that, then it means you have to go, you have to do a bunch of things to fix it, and that's hard to do. But it's also something where it's like it hurts your outlook a little bit, at least for me, where it's like, oh crap, people are seeing me this way. That makes me sad that people are seeing me this way. And there's, like I can't stand my voice. Like my voice is really weird. So it's like when I hear it, I'm like, oh no, people have to hear that. Like, whereas when I'm recording music, if I'm doing background vocals or something like that, I can tweak it and tweak it and tweak it and tweak it and tweak it over and over again. And I can make myself sound like other people, or I can like pitch correct if I need to do that. All that kind of stuff is sort of like I can make it what I want it to be. But in real time, you can't do that. And I hate the thought that in real time, I'm doing all kinds of stupid things that people hate, and I'm not looking at it.
Yeah, whatever you're saying resonates with me really hard because I'm also sleep lost like you. So when you said like earlier, like you look stupid, So for me, it's like you're cringe, because it's SF,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's like if you don't look at it, it doesn't exist. I'm like, I wonder if I'm doing that shit, Like I'm not thinking of the SF because I'm pretending not to look. Like it's like, yeah, I'm not gonna look in the mirror, whatever, But for you, it's like NT, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay, that's super interesting. I think that's a good way to put it. But then even if you don't look, it's still there, right? So it's kind of annoying.
Yeah, and it was like a really awful epiphany.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. All right. I want to ask you about being info dominant, okay? So I'll ask you 2 more questions and we'll wrap up the interview.
Cool.
And the first one is about being info dominant. Okay. So your play first, which means, your double activated play. So that means your double activated animal is a decider animal, right? And then your 4th animal is also a decider animal. So the energy doms, they have play and sleep in their first 3, right? And then the info dom has blast and consume in their first 3. So in your case, how do you personally see yourself being obsessed with information as opposed to the energy, like being goofy and stuff? Like the info is more important than the energy. However, even though the info is more important than the energy, because you have double activated play, you might still throw the tribe, a few bones of like goofiness before you get talked about the serious information stuff, So can you talk about like that relationship between all those,
Yeah, it's weird, and info kind of like when I was learning about this made sense for me. But there still was a little bit of like, I do have those moments of sort of like jumping in and riffing. Like if there's a riff happening and I can tell it's a riff happening, I will keep it going. Like I don't want to, like, it's sort of like the play side, I won't let that stop. But there is an extent to which like my wife and her family is like, I think her family's like entirely energy dominant as far as I can tell. Because it's like everyone interrupts over each other, and that's just the way, and it exhausts me. Because it's like I can't figure out what anybody's saying. I can't figure out where we are. I kind of just zone out sometimes, and then I get in trouble. Because it's like I want to hear a constant stream of information. That, like, if there's gonna be this discussion, especially when it's really interesting stuff, which they talk about really interesting stuff, but it's like if there's that much interruption, it's like watching a YouTube video and then having an ad every 5 seconds. And we're just like,
yeah,
okay.
That's a good analogy. I like that.
Yeah, so I guess that's kind of the way I experience it. But if it's something where it's like we're kind of in between topics, or like we know we're going to come back to the topic, but like we're just riffing off each other for random things. I love riffing too. Like I'll do that, but I just can't do the one and done interruptions. Like it has to be like, if it's going to be an interruption, we're going to go out on the interlude and then come back.
Yeah, got it. So you prefer like a nice flow of interaction as opposed to like random energy dom interruption, or that doesn't make any sense at all,
Yeah.
All right, dude. Last question for you. I want to ask you about being OI because you're a weird type. You're a glass lizard with a double activated extrovert sensing in the bottom. According to David Chan, you know someone is an IJ because they don't channel change as much. Do you see yourself not channel changing as much, or do you actually channel change personally because you do have the double activated extrovert sensing? How do you personally see?
Yeah, I channel change a lot. Funny tidbit, like I did one of the groups who types of, I can't remember what they were called.
The cognitive resolution group or something?
Yeah, that's it, cognitive resolution. They all were typing me. It was great watching all the types come in. And a lot of people typed me as like play first. Like that was pretty consistent. Like a lot of people, like more people put consume over blast for me. In fact, is kind of weird. But it's one of those things where it's like I'll definitely go off on tangents, and I like when the topic changes like back and forth, because if I'm on a topic for too long, maybe it's just because I've been watching too much like YouTube channels and stuff like that. It's sort of like you can scroll while you're watching TV and stuff like that. Maybe it's just our attention spans are getting shorter. I'm not sure. But it's kind of like I don't want to stay on one topic too long, especially if it's run out of steam. Like I can tell when something's run out of steam and when it's making people tired. So there's a little bit of, I guess it's the FESC where it's like, no matter how good a conversation is, if the room isn't enjoying it, I have to move. I have to change channels. If I see people getting bored, I'm like, we gotta switch this. So it's like I blast until I'm not.
I think that's a superpower that you have, because I think that's one of the problems that IJs have is they'll talk too much about the same topic and everyone's like bored to tears already. And so I think having that extrovert sensing is like, oh, double activated play as well. It's like, oh, I know the tribe is dozing off. Better switch this.
Yeah.
It's not worth it to finish the info, you know.
The other thing is if I change channels a lot, there's a good chance that there aren't a lot of great conversationists in the room. Sometimes sometimes people just aren't great conversationalists, and that's okay. Everyone's different at different things. But like sometimes it's sort of like you just want to be entertaining and just sort of like play around with that. And that's fine too. Like I can do both. Both are exciting.
Gotcha. All right, Will, I just want to say one thing before we wrap up the interview. You are super different from your other type twins I've interviewed in this channel. So I think that's super weird that you guys are all very different, even though you're all like the same type. So
I'm still confused as hell.
What's that?
I'm still confused as hell about it, but yeah.
yeah, because like you're definitely high play, I can see that. But your consume seems pretty strong also. So I don't know. It's hard to say. Anyways, dude, yeah, thanks for coming out and doing this interview, and great learning more about you personally.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kendrick. Love your channel. Love that you're doing this. This is awesome.
All right, man. Take care and see you around.
See ya.